This holy Son of God who's never done anything, so filled with shame, hanging there, reproached, rejected, despised, full of sorrow and grief. No one esteems him. No one thinks of him as anything. He's dirt to everybody. And he hangs his head in shame on the cross of Calvary. What was he doing? What was he going through? He was taking our shame.
My Redeemer lives, and I will see his glory as he works all things together for my good. Whatever things occur, of this I can be sure. I know my Redeemer lives. I know my Redeemer lives. My Redeemer. My Redeemer lives, and I will see his glory as he works all things together for my good. Whatever battlefield, although the pain is real, my struggle soon will fade as his glory is revealed. My Redeemer lives, and I will see his glory as he works all things together for my good. Whatever things occur, of this I can be sure. I know my Redeemer lives. I know my Redeemer. Even though I walk through the valley, I will fear no evil. I will fear no evil. Oh, he's with us. And on the battlefield, although the pain is real, my struggle soon will fade as his glory is revealed. My Redeemer lives, and I will see his glory as he works all things together for my good. Whatever things occur, of this I can be sure. I know my Redeemer lives.
Turn with me, Psalm 69. It is a prophecy about the suffering Christ. It says, because for your sake, verse 7, I have borne a reproach. Shame has covered my face. Now, reproach, I hope you understand, reproach. Now, reproach is very difficult to take, especially when you haven't done anything wrong and people talk all kinds of bad things about you. Now, we feel sometimes very holy about ourselves. And if anybody says anything, we are immediately upset because we think we're just upright and righteous. And if anybody says anything bad about us, we are so upset. But just imagine what Jesus would have thought. He has never sinned. You can go through him with a microscope. You will not find even one little flaw in him. He is the perfect Son of God. Never sinned. Yet they reproached him. Reproach is a kind of taunting, torturing a person emotionally, speaking bad things and uttering bad things about a person, literally torturing. Have you ever felt the torture of some people talking bad things about you? You feel mentally tortured, and some people complain of not being able to sleep and be at peace and go about their work because they're thinking about what somebody has said about them. It's a torture. It's a kind of a feeling of being taunted by someone with words, and it's an emotional issue, So he says, because for your sake I have borne reproach. Shame has covered my face. Shame has covered my face. One of the sure signs of shame is that a person will not look you in the face, in the eye. Why? Because there is shame. When you do something wrong, immediately you feel bad. Now when you sin, some people say, well, don't worry, nobody has seen it. Well, the problem is the person who sinned sees it, There's no way to hide it from yourself. You can hide it from everybody else. You can't hide it from yourself, and you can't hide it from God. Even before you go to God, you can't hide it from yourself. That is why when you do something very bad, immediately you feel down. Immediately there is a depressed feeling. Immediately, emotionally you feel bad. Have you ever felt that? You said a bad word, or you're driving by and some guy rudely drives by you and overtakes you and comes near you and, shows his fist or something like that, and you turn around and you curse him, and then you feel, my God, did I say that, You feel like you want to hang your head in shame. At the same time, if somebody's trying to cross the road and you stop and say, please cross, you feel so good. You sit there like a king, because you're such a good person, because you've done something good. See what a good act does, and see what a bad thing does for you emotionally. A good thing when you do, good charitable work, giving something to somebody, helping somebody in some way, doing something good, immediately brings an upliftment in your emotions. You feel good, elevated, really feel joyful. The moment you utter a bad word, the moment you think a bad thought even, immediately there is a letdown in your emotion. You feel bad. And shame causes you to cover your face. You don't want to show your face. Have you seen boys or girls who've done something wrong in school and the headmaster calls them? Don't ask me how I know. And you go and stand there. How do you stand there? You don't stand like this. You stand like this. And he's talking to you. He's always saying, look up. Listen to me. I say, Why? You've done wrong. Your head is down. You're covering your face, literally. You do not want to show your face because that's what shame is. Jesus says here, shame has covered my face. This holy Son of God who's never done anything, so filled with shame, hanging there, reproached, rejected, despised, full of sorrow and grief. No one esteems him. No one thinks of him as anything. He's dirt to everybody. And he hangs his head in shame on the cross of Calvary. What was he doing? What was he going through? He was taking our shame. Shame is a big issue. At the fall, condemnation came and shame came, and there is no power on earth that can deliver a man from shame. Now, if you got cut in your hand or leg or something, some injury, you can go to the hospital, get something done and patch it up and treat it and get something done for most of these injuries and so on. But when you're injured inside, where will you go and show? This is something you can't show anywhere. Shame is such a serious issue. Let's read a few more verses here. It's a whole psalm full of the suffering of Christ. Now let me read to you verse 1 and 2. Save me, O God. This is Jesus speaking again. For the waters have come up to my neck. I sink in deep mire where there is no standing. I have come into deep waters where the floods overflow me. Jesus speaking through the mouth of the psalmist David and describing the scene as he sees it. He says, I sink in deep mire. What he was saying is, oh Lord, save me because I'm sinking. Sinking in what? Sinking in the deep mire of sin. I'm sinking deeper and deeper in the slimy filthiness of the world's sin. The sin of the world has been laid on me. It is like an ocean, and I'm sinking in it deeper and deeper. That's what he's saying. But there are 4 verses in this chapter, in this psalm, that are actually used in the New Testament. This is such an important psalm. That's why New Testament and the Old Testament are so well connected, 4 verses used in the New Testament. So let me read those verses. Psalm 69, verse 4. Those who hate me without a cause are more than the hairs of my head. They are mighty who would destroy me. Being my enemies wrongfully, though I have stolen nothing, I still must restore it. Just look at the description. Those who hate me without a cause are more than the hairs of my head. They're more than the hairs of my head. Look at John 15. He who hates me, verse 23, hates my Father also. If I had not done among them the works which no one else did, they would have no sin. But they have seen and also hated both me and the Father. After all the works of miracles and kind, compassionate works that he has done, they hated him. Hated him like anything. They wanted to kill him. Kill him for what? For raising Lazarus from the dead and for healing the leper, healing the blind, making the lame walk, blessing people, forgiving people, being kind to people. People hated him without a cause. And verse 25 says, but this happened that the word might be fulfilled which is written in their law. They hated me without a cause. They hated me without a cause. See, they're quoting Psalm 69. Now, you know what it feels like to be hated without a cause. For doing good sometimes. He only healed and set people free, but he was hated. Hated without a, he only spoke the truth. But he was hated, despised. I remember many years ago, not many years ago, just recently, before Oral Roberts died, he was an old man, more than 90 years old, sitting down in a chair and speaking to a crowd of about 7,000 pastors who have come from all over the world in the university, in one of the auditoriums. Sitting there, I never forget, at his old age, he was probably 90, 91 years old, I think, quoting the Bible by heart, Ephesians 1, 2, 3, and all, just verse after verse, fully from memory, just having the Bible open, never looking at it, quoting and referring to Greek word meaning and giving exposition and all that. Amazing preaching he was doing. He said, if you gather all the people that hated me in the early days, this whole auditorium will not be enough. 7,000 seat auditorium. This whole auditorium will not be enough if you gather all those who hated me. But none of them were able to stop me from doing what I wanted to do, he said. Now, at that moment, it looks, it sounded good. I liked it. But the thing is, just imagine being hated. Why was he hated? He was hated because he proclaimed healing. They called him a fraud. They called him this and that. They disgraced him in some places wherever he went. And he went to Australia one time and totally disgraced and sent back and so on. And, purposely done like that. Hated him just because he preached that Jesus heals. He says, I read the New Testament hundreds of times on my knees, and I know that Jesus is good. He's the healer. He's not the one who gives sickness. He's the healer. That's all. And people hated, religious people hated him for that, despised him, rejected him, spoke all kinds of things. Just imagine the pain and the suffering a man goes through. No man is perfect. I know no man is perfect. But yet, Imperfect people, we have so many things wrong with us, but yet somebody says so many things against us unjustly for nothing big that is wrong that we have done. People hate us, then you feel very great sorrow and grief inside. You can imagine the pain that he would have suffered as a young man traveling and preaching and so on. But just multiplied that by thousands of times or even millions of times, because he is the Son of God. He never had an ill intention about anybody. He never did anything bad. He never had any flaws in him. He was perfect. He was perfect. If he wanted, he could have turned around and burned them to ashes, these people that put him on the cross. Just imagine the kind of suffering that he went through as he hung on the cross. And he says, those that hate me without a cause are more than the hairs in my head, he says. Just gives a picture of what Jesus went through on the cross of Calvary. Verse 8 also comes, 69:8, Psalm 69:8. I have become a stranger to my brothers and an alien to my mother's children. This actually became true. If you read it, don't have to turn, you can mark it down. Mark chapter 3, verse 21, and John chapter 7, verse 3 to 5 tells us that his own brothers did not believe him. His own family did not believe him. In John 7, they're telling him, why don't you go do your miracles in public so that they'll all know that you're Son of God? If you're Son of God, go do something. Show yourself. Don't be lingering around like this. Do something. Exhibit yourself. And in Mark chapter 3, you read that in one place, they said, well, he's out of his mind, and they brought him back home, They called their brother Jesus, this powerful man who's casting out devils, healing the sick, saying he's out of his mind. How do you feel when people tell you you're out of your mind? When your own family tells you, he's gone crazy, I think. He's mad. That is very injurious, isn't it? I mean, that pain, that suffering, how would you feel? When your own brothers, your own family says, this guy has lost his mind. My son, or my brother, but he's lost his mind. They know very well he's not lost his mind. They know very well that he can heal the sick, set the people free, and so on. But yet, they say he's lost his mind because they can't understand him. Another verse, verse 9. Because the zeal of your house has eaten me up, and the reproaches of those who reproach you have fallen on me. This you find in John chapter 2, verse 17, where he goes into the temple and drives out the money changers and dove sellers and, business people that are doing business inside the temple. He says, don't make the temple of God into a den of thieves. Get out, he says. Literally whips them and sends them out. And there, this verse is quoted. This is done. Why? Because this verse says, because zeal of your house has eaten me up. The reproach of those who reproached you have fallen on me. So he did a right thing there, but they reproached him. Again, feeling the reproach for a good deed that he has done. He has only cleaned up the house of God. He has only set things right the way it should be. He has only rebuked the evil that was happening in that society that day. What was the problem? Was changing money is not the problem, or selling doves to the poor worshipper is not anything wrong. Selling sheep and lambs and cows for sacrifice is not wrong. They wanted to sacrifice. Selling that is not wrong. But they were selling it for, it's like eating popcorn in a cinema theater, Once you come into the temple, you pay double for everything. That's what is wrong. They have made it a den of thieves. The fact that they sold is not wrong, but the fact that they exploited people just because now they've come into the temple, they don't want to go out, you double the price, That's what was wrong with that. But yet he was reproached for that, despised for that. Now turn with me to 21st verse, 69:21. They also gave me gall for my food, and for my thirst they gave me vinegar to drink. You know how that was fulfilled, right? And in the place where it was fulfilled, Matthew's Gospel, chapter 27, verse 34 and 48, it says, exactly what is said here, that they gave him gall for food and for their thirst they gave vinegar to drink. Just imagine, the man is thirsty, not eaten all day, carried the cross up that hill, and has been crucified, spit upon, laughed at, ridiculed, beaten, slapped, insulted to the utmost. And now he's hanging on the cross. He's not had anything to eat and he's thirsty, just asking for water. And these guys didn't even give him a drop of water, and they gave him this stuff. And he put it in his mouth and he couldn't even swallow it. Just imagine the kind of treatment, insult, injury, emotionally that thing causes. Now, I just went to all this to show you what kind of crucifixion it was and how it involved extreme suffering of shame. But I want you to turn to 1 Peter for just one moment, because I want to clarify this, because it will be useful to you. Because I read that psalm, and there you see the psalmist speaking in first person, yet I said Christ is speaking that, and it is happening to Christ, not to David. It's a prophecy about Christ. You can say, well, by what authority do you say it? How can you interpret something like that? Now, so this will be helpful to you at all times to understand the Old Testament. So I want you to turn to 1 Peter chapter 1, and let me read to you verse 10 onwards. Of this salvation, the prophets have inquired and searched carefully, who prophesied of the grace that would come to you. It's talking about Old Testament prophecies and how to view and perceive them. They've searched it carefully, it says. Those who prophesied of the grace that would come to you. They searched it. Searching what manner of time the Spirit of Christ who was in them was indicating when he testified beforehand the sufferings of Christ and the glories that would follow. What he's literally saying is, when they were prophesying, the Spirit of Christ was in them, and he was saying the things. So when you read Psalm 69, where psalmist is talking in the first person, you should recognize the body, the mouth was psalmist's mouth, David's mouth, but the person speaking was the Spirit of Christ in that person. That's the way Peter, the greatest apostle, disciple of Christ, he now understands. See, he was a person who was dull of heart also. Remember, before the resurrection and the coming of the Holy Spirit, everybody was dull. They failed all their tests. 3 years of training, nobody got their degree, I think. Everybody failed all the exams that Jesus had for them, They couldn't believe nothing. They just could not understand what the Bible said about him. He went through the whole Old Testament, told them it's all talking about me, but they never saw the point. But after the day of Pentecost, something tremendous happens to Peter and the apostles. They now understand. Look at Peter's preaching on the day of Pentecost in Acts chapter 2. He refers to Psalm 16 and gives an exposition of that and says that this is about Christ. It's not talking about David. It says it's about Christ, because he is the one that was not left. His soul was not left in Hades, but he was raised up. It's talking about Christ. Authoritatively he says that. He talks about the prophet Joel, and he says, this is that. The Holy Spirit that is poured out among you today, what you see, this phenomenon, this extraordinary phenomenon where people spoke in tongues and were filled with the Holy Spirit. This is that which was spoken by Joel, he says. If you had asked him a few days before, that would have been a different story. Completely understands now. And that Peter says towards the end, he says, listen, I'll give you a secret. Those who prophesied in the Old Testament times, they thoroughly searched everything. The Spirit of Christ who was in them was indicating when he testified beforehand the suffering of Christ and the glories that will follow. See, the prophets prophesied. How did they prophesy? The Spirit of Christ was in them. So the body was the prophets, but the Spirit that was speaking through the prophet was the Spirit of Christ. So when the psalmist speaks those things in Psalm 69, it's the Spirit of Christ speaking about what? About the sufferings. Here Peter says that. Testified beforehand. The Spirit of Christ that was in them testified beforehand. The sufferings of Christ.
Everybody clapping your hands if you can with me, all right? mercy and the power of His love, they is stronger than all, stronger than all. As we worship in unity, Jesus our Lord, victory comes in His name by His word, not by power, and not by might, by my Spirit, says the Lord. Not by power, and not by might, by my Spirit, says the Lord. The weapons of our warfare are not of this world, they are mighty through God, mighty through God. The power of His mercy and the power of His love, they are stronger than all, stronger than all. As we worship in unity, Jesus our